During a family dinner, my father looked at me and said, "You are no longer welcome here." My mother immediately added, "That's right." For a moment, I thought it was some kind of twisted joke, but their expressions told me they meant every word. So, I calmly told them I would no longer be paying their rent. The color drained from their faces. I left that night. The next day, I'm writing this here because I don't know where else to put it. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just need to get this out. I'd been holding it in for months, and that moment finally broke whatever was left of my patience. Maybe some of you have been in a similar situation, feeling like a stranger in the place you're supposed to call home, constantly being made to feel like you owe something just for existing. If you know, you know. Here's what happened. 2 years ago, my parents lost their house. They never gave me the full story, but the short version is that they sold it before the bank could take it. My mother made it sound like a clever decision. My father, on the other hand, blamed everyone but himself. They used the money from the sale to rent a modest apartment in the same town where I grew up. For a while, they managed with what they had left. At the time, I was living in a different city, working a decent job. I was making enough to get by, but the cost of living was eating away at my savings. My rent alone was over $3,000 a month. Just when I thought I was barely keeping up, the company I worked for laid off half the staff, including me, without warning or severance. I stayed in the city for a few more months, hoping to find another job. I didn't. My savings started running out. The thought of moving back home made me sick, but desperation has a way of making you swallow your pride. My parents offered a solution. They said I could stay with them until I got back on my feet. They even joked about how nice it would be to have the family together again. I believed them, but there was nothing kind about their offer. The moment I arrived, they made it clear this wasn't help. It was a transaction. They demanded $2,300 a month, more than half the rent, even though it was far more than I'd paid for my own place years earlier. Still, I agreed. I didn't want charity. I just needed time. The arrangement was that I'd cover most of the bills: electricity, internet, groceries. I did it without complaint. My mother cooked sometimes, but every meal felt like a performance, as if I owed her something for it. My father? He did nothing. He sat around like a retired king, barking orders at me to clean or take out the trash, treating me like a teenager skipping chores. Not once did they thank me or acknowledge that they couldn't afford the apartment without me. Instead, they made me feel like I was taking advantage of them. It got so bad that I stopped talking to my brothers about it. I was too embarrassed. I told myself, just get through a few more months and you'll be out. Then came the family dinner. My brothers, their wives, my aunt, and uncle were all there. I paid for the entire meal, the turkey, the wine, most of the sides. My mother took credit for everything. I didn't say a word. I just kept my head down, trying to get through the night. At first, everything seemed normal. People were laughing, talking. Then my father had a few drinks, too many, and suddenly stood up, raised his glass, and announced, "You are no longer welcome here." I looked around, thinking it had to be some kind of sick joke. But then my mother said, "That's right," with this smug little smile, like she was proud of it. I didn't react right away. I just stared at her. My brothers were silent. My aunt looked shocked. Finally, I leaned back and said, calmly, "Fine, then I'm done paying rent." The room went dead silent. Their faces went from smug to pale in seconds, because in that moment they realized something. They needed me far more than I needed them. My brother Tyler asked me what I meant about paying rent. When I told him how much I'd been covering, his jaw dropped. My other brother, Chris, looked furious. My uncle laughed and said, "You've been paying just to be insulted?" My aunt turned to my mother and asked if it was true. That's when Tyler pulled me aside and told me I could stay with him, no rent, no conditions. I didn't hesitate. That night, after everyone left, I packed my things and walked out without saying a word to my parents. I thought it was finally over. I had a place to stay, a fresh start, and no obligations to them anymore. But I'd forgotten one thing. There was $20,000 in cash hidden in my old bedroom closet, my emergency fund. I'd never told anyone about it. 2 days later, I went back to get it. I didn't warn them. I didn't want to give them time to make excuses. I still had my key, so I let myself in. The moment I stepped inside, my mother appeared, as if she'd been waiting. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. I told her I was there to get the rest of my things. She crossed her arms and said, "You're not allowed in here anymore." I ignored her and went straight to my old room. The closet door was wide open. The money was gone. I searched everywhere, under the bed, behind the shelves, in the drawers. Nothing. I turned to my mother and asked where the bag was. She shrugged and said, "We threw it out. It was just old junk." I kept my voice steady. There was $20,000 in that bag, in cash. I want it back. She didn't even blink. Then my father appeared in the doorway. I repeated myself. That money was mine. I'm not leaving without it. He looked me in the eye and said, "It's ours now. You owe us. Consider it payment for everything we've done for you." That's when I understood. They hadn't just stumbled upon the money. They'd gone looking for it after I left. I asked one last time. My father said, "If you don't leave, we'll call the police." I didn't argue. I walked out, got in my car, and drove away, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. When I got back to Tyler's place, he knew something was wrong. I didn't want to talk about it, but he kept pushing. Finally, I told him everything. The money, what my parents had said. He stared at me like he couldn't believe it. Then he asked the question I'd been asking myself. What can we do about this? I had no proof the money ever existed. No photos, no receipts, no bank records showing a withdrawal. But Tyler refused to let it go. He started making calls, legal aid, friends who knew about property law, even a buddy who'd been to law school. Chris got involved too. He was quieter, but I could tell he was angry. We all agreed what they'd done was theft. But actually doing something about it wasn't as simple as filing a police report. Tyler suggested we talk to a lawyer. I wasn't sure it would help, but I agreed. A week later, we met with one. A friend of a friend who didn't charge for the first meeting. I laid out everything. How I'd been living there, how much I'd paid, the agreement we'd had, and the $20,000 they'd taken. The lawyer listened, then asked the obvious question. "Do you have any proof the money existed?" I didn't. No photos, no receipts, no messages mentioning it. Nothing. The lawyer said it would be difficult. Without evidence, the police wouldn't take a report. Even if we filed a lawsuit, it would be my word against theirs. But Tyler wasn't ready to give up. He asked what we could do. The lawyer said we'd need to document everything. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals, proof I'd been living there, records of the payments I'd made. I still had some of that. Bank transfers, receipts for bills in my name. It wasn't much, but it was something. We left with a plan. File in small claims court. Sue them for the $20,000. Even if we didn't win right away, it would force them to respond. Tyler helped me gather everything. Bank records, Venmo payments, screenshots of texts where they'd asked for money. The deeper I dug, the angrier I got. There were messages from my mother saying things like, "Can you cover rent this month?" Or, "We need help with the electric bill." Not once had I refused. Chris came over one night while I was organizing everything. He brought beer, sat down, and quietly said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was this bad." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't proud of any of it. Then Chris told me something that made my stomach drop. He said that after I left, my mother had mentioned they finally had some breathing room. At the time, he hadn't thought much of it, but now it clicked. They hadn't just taken the money. They'd spent it. Probably thought I'd never come back for it. Tyler filed the paperwork a week later. The court date was set for 3 months out. We had them served officially. No dramatic confrontation, just a legal notice taped to their door. I thought they'd call, maybe try to threaten or negotiate, but they didn't. Total silence. Not a word to me, Tyler, or Chris. That's when I knew they were scared. Not of the court, but of everyone finding out. Then, 2 weeks later, my father called from an unknown number. The court date arrived on a rainy morning. We got there early. I was nervous, not because I thought I'd lose, but because it felt surreal, suing my own parents. They showed up like they were running an errand. My mother had this fake calm expression, like she was above it all. My father looked bored. They didn't glance at me or my brothers. When the judge asked for their side, my father said 5 words I'll never forget. "We have no argument." That was it. No denial, no excuses. The judge ruled in my favor. $20,000 returned plus court fees. Total, $25,000. My parents didn't react. They stood up when dismissed and walked out without looking at me. 3 weeks later, a check arrived in the mail. No note, no apology, just a plain envelope with my name scribbled on it. I cashed it the same day. The money was back. But what I'd lost wasn't just cash. It was the last illusion I had about who they were. I thought it was over. Then, 6 weeks later, my aunt and uncle invited everyone to a family barbecue. They'd stayed neutral through everything, pretending nothing had happened. I almost didn't go, but curiosity got the better of me. Bad idea. My parents were there, laughing like nothing was wrong. When I walked in, my mother looked at me like I was a stranger. My father gave a single nod. I stayed quiet. But then my mother stood up, tapped her glass, and gave this speech about family forgiveness. Then she looked right at me and said, "I think it's time for you to apologize for dragging us to court over a misunderstanding." The whole yard went silent. I stood up to leave. That's when my father said, "Running away again? You've always been good at that." Tyler and Chris exploded, shouting, calling them thieves. My mother screamed that we were poisoned against her. My aunt finally snapped, yelling at my parents for how they'd treated me. I walked out in the middle of the chaos. My aunt texted me later, "You were right to leave. I'm sorry." There won't be a happy ending here. No reconciliation. Some people show you who they are, and all you can do is believe them. A week later, my parents took the delusion further. My mother posted a long, twisted version of events online, painting herself as a saint and me as a bitter, ungrateful son. Then my father tried to trick their landlord into putting the lease back in my name, without even telling me. The landlord called me to confirm. When I explained the truth, he sounded stunned. I don't know what they're trying to prove anymore. Maybe they think if they keep lying, it'll become the truth. But it doesn't matter. I have the court records. I have the truth. And they'll never get near my life again. If you enjoyed this story and felt the emotions behind it, don't forget to give it a like, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and heartfelt stories. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring more content like this to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.